I don't think people really understand what is about to happen to Florida and their real estate insurance problem. Like, I wanted to make this video to really tell you my thoughts as a real estate agent, as a real estate investor, somebody that deals with trying to get insurance on real estate on a daily basis, and it is really problematic. I mean, this is really scary what's about to happen, and I want to talk about it in this video because I don't think people quite have grasped the situation we're in with real estate and insurance. Politicians just don't seem to get it. What's about to flip the real estate market, if politicians really don't grasp the subject soon, it's going to become a major issue. So let's talk about it. I really wanted to talk about how this disaster with Hurricane Idalia could really affect everybody. So this hurricane made landfall in the Big Bend about 4 or 5 hours ago as I'm filming this video. And it's gonna absolutely wreck what it's hitting. At a Cat 3, look, I just recently went through a Cat 3. Everybody calls Sally a Cat 2, but it was a 3 coming up Gibbs Road. And the amount of wreckage that it had with either the storm surge or the wind was just unfathomable. Now this number 3 and us having multiple storms hit Florida and the Gulf Coast in the last few years, I see a lot of things happening. One, these houses that are old, they're going to become almost too expensive to own. See, the situation really boils down like this. In order to close a real estate transaction that it has a loan, conventional loan, VA loan, anything to do with the bank, these lenders require for you to have insurance, certain types of insurance. And for properties that cannot meet the elements required by these insurance companies, the bank won't lend on them. They won't allow the transaction to go through. So when you see these storms come through, the insurance companies come out with more and more requirements that these properties have to have in order for them to say, you know what, I'll give you a policy on that. For the last 3 weeks between buying my house, with buying my last rental property, with buying my house, and then securing insurance for clients, I've realized that these insurance companies are getting stricter and stricter and stricter. From everything from the high impact windows to shutters for the windows, to hurricane clips, to roofs less than 15 years old. Even though DeSantis tried to come in and say, you know what, you can't make them replace a roof if it's over 15 years old. They just said, well, we changed the building code, so therefore you still got to change it, or you still got to get a new roof because it doesn't meet building code now, and therefore your roof is not up to the standard we need. They just find a loophole to keep making people upgrade their houses. In their defense, they probably would say rightfully so, but what we're seeing is more and more standard put forth by insurance companies for houses to become insured. So when I say that some houses will become too expensive to own, if you live in certain areas, or if you've got old windows, old roof, bad plumbing, old wiring, a lot of the upgrades needed put forward by these insurance companies, your house, the value will be greatly affected because you can't bind insurance to close a conventional loan, and most properties are sold with loans. Yeah, there are people out there with cash, but most people look at their cash as a highly valuable thing, are most likely going to use it as leverage to get the house for a less price. And they still probably need to get insurance. Most people, I talk a lot of trash about, hey, I'll just self-insure. Well, I don't want to self-insure my rental properties. I don't want to self-insure some things. I still want to have insurance on it until I can get the property, I can look it over and make sure the wiring's good, make sure the plumbing's good, and I'm not going to have an expected loss if something I didn't know in the house happens. Especially buying houses are in bad shape. They could catch fire, they could get flooded, on and on and on and on. So as we've been watching the news, I've been seeing people with their houses flooded. Everybody on my Facebook in the Big Bend and that part of the Panhandle in Central Florida, I mean, they're sitting in living rooms full of water. We're looking at roofs blown off. We're looking at storm surge. We're looking at a lot of really bad things. And if you couple that with a lot of the other national disasters that happened, like Maui, look at that. That was a fire. We're looking at, tornadoes. We're looking at wildfires. We're looking at a lot of things to where I think we're going to see a lot of these insurance companies just pulling out of the state. or they're going to put in these really high standards to where they can either, I can be picky and choosy on what I want to insure. We can now look at crawl spaces and saying, okay, well, that crawl space is not masoned in, therefore we're going to reject the whole house. I had one of my properties, I bound the insurance and then I got canceled as soon as I bound. Why? I'm looking at Citizens Insurance for my personal house. I just bound it a week before the hurricane. I got lucky there. And they were looking at my storm shutters super close, even though they were legit storm shutters and I had the permit and I had everything. They wanted to see the etching on the storm shutters. I've never really seen, even when you get a wind mitigation or you get a 4-point, you know, where they'll take pictures of the shutters and the whole 9 yards, they wanted to see the etching. And then they wanted to see the little yellow stickers for the shutters. It's how picky they were getting a week before the hurricane. And then now with this hurricane, it's going to allow them to get even stricter on what they're going to look at. It's all risk mitigation, and I get it. I mean, think about what an insurance company is. One thing I saw with this storm, it seemed as if the insurance company shut down the market earlier. Like, the hurricane had not come in the Gulf yet, and that was usually kind of when they shut things down when it gets in the Gulf. It was actually still south of Cuba, like down there towards, you know, the Caribbean. And we thought that they would shut the insurance market down on like Monday, Tuesday, when it actually got into the Gulf. So that's what we were preparing to bind insurance. But they shut it down early. And then Citizens just shut the market down on like Friday and then Monday. It was like they shifted the model. And if one little squiggly line was touching the state, they shut the market down. So like, I'm sitting here thinking like, are we going to keep moving the standard to where we go from in the Gulf to not in the Gulf to, oh, well, there's one model out there and the Weather Channel and the National Weather Service have one spaghetti string going to the state and it has a name, therefore we're going to shut the real estate market down because insurance is shut down. Are we going to move that out into the Atlantic? Are we going to start doing that when it's off the coast of Africa or anywhere near the idea of it being a hurricane? And this could greatly affect transactions taking place. Are we just going to like take weeks off now because we have hurricanes all the time coming into the Gulf or coming towards the state of Florida, both from the Atlantic side and from the Gulf? Like, these are really big questions because insurance companies are getting more timid about when they will bind. Well, our economy runs off doc stamps and real estate transactions, and I can hear the comment section right now saying, well, why Florida? Why should we insure Florida? Florida makes a lot of money with tourism. Makes a lot of money. Florida's economy is cooking, and there's a lot of people wanting to live here, and that's how these economies work. And to say, oh, well, we're not going to insure these properties, that's not even practical. We have to figure out things like getting rid of all the fraud that happens in the insurance market and all the litigation, and maybe come out with some policies that just meet the threshold that people can get insurance, but it's going to be the bare bones. We got to come up with some new ideas, and we got to like really sting these politicians to get out there and fix it. I don't want to say I'm not an insurance agent. I'm just a real estate agent and an investor that deals with this stuff all the time, and I've heard it all. And there's always some new excuse of why they can't bind insurance, or why they can't buy an insurance. You know, you got to have a 4-point, you know, on these properties. You got to have roof, you got to have electrical, you got to have HVAC, you got to have plumbing. And these things have got to meet their threshold. That's understandable. But when we start really going into the weeds and coming up with these new standards that now all these houses have to be upgraded because we came out with a new building code standard, and it's changed every other year or every 5 years, depending on which code you're looking at. Like, people can't afford to constantly be upgrading their houses to meet these insurance companies that's still going to cancel them anyways after they make the repair. I've seen a lot of people get a letter saying they're going to get canceled, put a new roof on, spend 20 grand, and get canceled anyways. It's like this crazy circle of events. They're basically saying the probability and me taking the risk, I think that based upon the criteria I have set, that because they want to make money, they're a for-profit, I'm going to make money on selling you this premium because we don't think that house is going to be destroyed in X amount of years. And they've ran their derivatives, they've ran their formulas, and they're willing to take that chance. Just like going to casino, they're playing the statistics. And when we just keep getting battered and battered and battered and battered here in the state of Florida and on the Gulf Coast, it becomes expensive for them. And I think the governor has hemmed in some of these insurance companies with car insurance, saying, well, if you don't do houses, you can't do cars. And that's another one. I don't think people are expecting the amount of car premiums to do what they're doing. So let's think of this perfect storm we're seeing here in real estate. We've got high prices, which I just came from Austin, Texas, from the Keller Williams event, and I was looking at some of the numbers, some of the data all the way across the United States. And if you look at, as a whole, real estate is still up, right? You might see some parts of the United States starting to falter 10, 15%, like I said on this channel a long time ago. They may be faltering, but it's still booming in other parts of the country. So when you factor it all together in the Case and Shiller report, you'll wind up seeing that we could be, well, we are at a relatively up housing price, like across the United States, that we are actually higher now than we were like a year ago. And so we have high interest rates, so the cost of money is higher. We have high prices, okay? And then we have wages that are not going up. And now we've got insurance that is going up. This is the perfect storm for a catastrophe, and nobody's really talking about it. That I think insurance, the cost of insurance, is going to be the crippling event for houses in Florida. And this is just it's unfathomable that the governor's not talking about it, these local politicians are not talking about it, and that the people in general do not understand that if you get dropped, your insurance gets dropped. And let's say you've had that insurance for years. Like, let's say you've had it for 3 years, and you weren't tracking that your roof is now over 15 years old, or that most of these companies are not going to insure galvanized plumbing and you got it, or that old wiring you've got in your house that everybody's just kind of forgotten about is now going to come up on a 4-point inspection. When you get that 4-point inspection to go shop insurance, they're going to see old wiring, or they're going to see old plumbing, or you're going to see an old roof, or they're going to see no wind mitigation, they're going to see no storm shutters, they're going to see all these things. And then now nobody's going to want to give you insurance. So what happens when you have a loan, a mortgage, and your insurance gets dropped? Okay, you've got to go shop it and find it, or the mortgage company is going to find it for you, and they're not going to care how much it costs. So let's say your insurance premium was $3,000 a year, and the only thing that mortgage company can find is $7,000 a year. They're just going to throw it into your escrow, and then you're just going to pay for it. And your mortgage is just, your monthly is going to go up, okay? And what I am really concerned is what happens when they can't find it. What happens if it becomes so expensive because nobody wants to bind it that now people are looking at legal action on their properties and they could lose everything. Like, there's going to be a time there where, like, I don't know what the answer is going to be. Or that it's going to be so unaffordable for these families, these people, that investors are going to swoop in with cash and they're just going to absorb all these houses. And the wholesaler is going to come in and just wreak havoc. And we're going to see a lot of portfolios, a lot of large investment companies just buying up all these houses. And, you know, like, it's staggering the amount of houses right now. And the transactions this year have been investors and portfolio funds absorbing houses. I have been seeing across the board with these builders, build to rent, build to rent. Even the ones that are getting the land, they develop it. And so one company will develop it, you know, buy it and develop it, and then they'll sell it to another builder, and then they will build to rent. They'll take that portfolio, and then they'll throw it into another large portfolio, some syndicated fund, and you will never see those houses again. They will forever be rentals. And you know, I'm a capitalist. I believe in people working hard and making money. But there will be a point that they might have to bust up some of these large corporations that own tens of thousands of houses. because you're just going to have a real problem. And I'll say this, I know I'm on a tangent here, but I think you will see the federal government come in that if a mortgage is backed by the government, a government-backed loan, that they will try, and I saw this in a Biden memo not too long ago, that they will try to force people that have that mortgage to do certain things. And I think we'll see that short-term rentals will be, there'll be some type of rule saying you can't do short-term rentals, or that there'll be rent control put on top of it. They're going to find a way, and I think we'll see in this next election season, to greatly put a grip on what you're going to be allowed to do with all these mortgages and these properties. And then you're going to see a lot of the local governments start to restrict short-term rentals, Airbnbs. You're going to see higher tax rates on them. You're going to see just a lot of weird stuff get thrown out by politicians trying to solve the housing problem. I also look for politicians to lobby for these government-backed loans to be, hey, we're not going to loan on houses that now have septic tanks in certain areas. We're not going to allow houses to be, and I don't know all the stipulations on lending. I'm not a lender. But I can feel the federal government and the local governments trying to put pressure on certain things to solve the problem, and I think that's going to goof things up even more. Meanwhile, anytime any of these things get implemented in the market, you're going to have housing prices get affected. You can't mess with the market through the government and expect something to work out that's not going to be painful. I mean, 2020, 2021, when they fooled with the market, we saw a massive housing explosion. And it had a lot to do with inflation and printing money, the Federal Reserve, blah, 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 blah. But we saw them tamper with it, with low interest rates, and we saw what happened. Housing prices exploded. I think, too, we're going to see these insurance companies say, we're not going to insure houses older than 1970. Or we're not going to insure houses that we're only going to do it from 2006 to 2015 and not from 2015 to 2020, and then from, or we're going to do it from 2015 and on, and there's going to be all this fencing. Like, it's all about risk mitigation. So they only want so many houses in one location, or, you know, this insurance company wants to fence itself in this area, and, you know, it's all about reducing risk. And so it gets hard for the insurance agent that's trying to sell it. It gets hard for the real estate agent that's with the buyer actually looking at the property saying, can we get insurance on this and can we close this transaction? And it gets hard on the lenders because they're sitting there like, can we please close? Can we please close? Because they're just receiving documents and doing all the work in the office. They're not actually looking at the property. So they're having to go off all these inspections. So it gets tough for everybody, because it's becoming so expensive for anybody to have a house, and then renters are paying so much money. But what's not understood is that if the price to own goes up, the rent goes up, because the landlord's insurance went up, his taxes went up, now he's paying a higher interest rate on the mortgage, his lawyer went up, his contractor went up, their insurance went up, the lawyer's malpractice insurance went up. The real estate agent's insurance went up for errors and admissions. His expenses for ads. Everything has gone up, and it's not coming back down. These things are not coming back down. So what do? Like, rent prices have to stay up. I don't see rent prices coming down, and I'm not seeing the inventory on the market to make real estate prices come down. I think they were going to keep going up, and I think that we will see the money printer come back on for election season, because they don't want to have, politicians do not want to have a stagnant economy going into election season. I think we'll see high interest rates going into next year, mid next year, and then we go into like that last stretch of election season, we're going to see interest rates starting to come back down to stimulate the economy. And everybody's going to go, ooh, you know, greatness, greatness. Oh, interest rates are coming down, or we'll see a 40-year mortgage or something like that. They'll just change the calculator and try to bring down some of these houses prices. But if they do that and they bring down interest rates, you're going to see real estate explode because the money's getting cheap again. And then we're going to see housing prices keep going up. And it's creating the perfect storm of real estate getting way out of hand, and the next generation will just not afford or not be able to afford to own it, and it's sad. But alright, that's all I got to say about this. I wanted to crank this video out because we have seen the perfect storm for a lot of problems, and insurance has to be taken care of. Citizens is the last ditch, and they're becoming so picky that I mean, the amount of inspections you got to have a wind mitt, 4-point, sometimes a roof inspection, and then in roof certifications, like we already have a 4-point, now we got to have a roof certification, and then we got to have, it's just out of control. And I think they're going to come into more standards and more rules. And they're even going to inspect after the inspect. I had my house inspected once by me and my home inspector that I paid for, and then the home inspector from Citizens came out to look at the exterior. Same way with my rental property. They came out and inspected it again. So that property was inspected twice. This one was inspected twice. And you know you're paying for that in the premium. Don't act like it's a free inspection. So, like, I think I don't know what the answer is. The insurance companies don't want to believe the home inspectors. They want to do their own inspection, and I don't know how all the transactions can get done in real estate the way it's all going. So put your comment down below with what you think is going to happen, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to go on some more of these tangents. I finally had time to do this one. I'll see you guys in the next video.